Hey, we're live. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, day 4. We're nearly done. We're nearly done. So, we've got tomorrow, obviously. And then I'll tell you what comes after that because there is a little something extra that just came to me yesterday that I'd like to do. So, hi. Okay. Now, today, I'm going to talk a little bit about physical symptoms. I'm going to start by just reading you a couple of pages out of my book because, and some of you will have heard this, some of you will have read this, but it just explains a little bit about what happens in our body and our brain when we worry. It's a really simplified version. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Like, yes, I know if somebody studies psychology, there's all the different parts of the brain, etc. But this is really just to give you a simple overview of what's happening. And then I'll go on to talk a little bit more about it after. So I'm just going to read. It's just literally 2 pages. Okay, this is the most well-used book I've got because I use it all the time. It's soaking wet as well for some reason. Anyway, so I'm going to read this out to you. Let me tell you a little bit about what happens in your brain when you stress and worry. The oldest part of our brain, the most primal and underdeveloped part, often called the lizard brain or the reptilian brain, is the part of the brain making sure you stay alive. It's a really important part. It's where the fight or flight or fear reactions are dealt with. And it also regulates body temperature, regulation of heart rate, and so on. It's where we create patterns of behavior and habits, but it's not too concerned with long-term solutions. It's only very much concerned with what's happening right now and what you're telling it right now. It doesn't have the ability, it's not advanced enough part of the brain to understand when we're making shit up, when we're telling ourselves there's a problem and there isn't. It just takes what we're telling it as absolute truth. So I like to talk about it as though it's the A&E department of the brain. When you go into A&E, they're there to keep you alive and deal with any immediate symptoms and issues. They don't treat any long-term issues, as they're really there just to keep us alive. And that's the same with the lizard brain. This part of the brain is immediately responding to your messages that you may be in danger. This is great if we're faced with some kind of emergency and need to be prepared, but imagine when you're worrying about what may happen next week, next month, or next year, you're sending a message to the lizard brain that you're in danger through your thoughts. The brain will then respond as though you're in immediate danger and react accordingly. It doesn't have the ability to work out whether you're overreacting, overthinking, or worrying about the what ifs. It takes what you are telling it literally and does exactly what it's meant to do. It may speed up your heart rate, getting you ready to run or fight, for example. Yet when you're just sat watching TV and not planning to fight or run away from any danger, it can feel uncomfortable. And we then overthink that feeling of discomfort, again sending a further message of danger, and so the cycle continues. Sometimes when we feel stressed or anxious, we can get cross with our symptoms. This might be familiar to a lot of you. It definitely was for me. But that's kind of like asking someone to do something really important for you and then getting cross with them for doing it. Like, it really is a vital part of us surviving, that the brain listens to our messages when we tell it it's in danger and prepares our body for it. We wouldn't stay alive if it didn't do that. But what happens is when we stress and we worry and we're overwhelmed, we're misusing it because we're making stuff up and we're worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet. But the brain isn't advanced enough to know that. I hear people talking all the time about how they're going to fight their anxiety, face up to it and tackle it as though it's some kind of monster. I understand it can feel like that. I've been there many times, but it really isn't effective to try and fight anxiety. Now, when I told you at the beginning that we had mind, thought, and consciousness, which are the 3 principles, and when we talk about mind, it's just this internal sat nav, this guidance, just guiding us with what to do. It's our body takes care of everything. So even in a panic attack, even when we're severely overwhelmed and it starts to affect us physically, the body will do what it's supposed to do. And I think we can often distrust that the body knows what it's doing and that it's going to do what it needs to do. So there's another example that I talk about in my book around, if you tried to kill yourself through holding your breath, you would not succeed. And when I first used this as an example in my book, I ended up Googling it because I thought, what if somebody has? Like, what if somebody has defied all, human nature and has managed to hold their breath and kill themselves? So I did do a little Google just to make sure. Now, the closest anybody's ever got is that they've passed out. So if you hold your breath for long enough, you may pass out. But what happens when we pass out and we fall to the floor is our system kicks back in and we breathe. Because the system, the body, being a human being, takes care of it. And as I just said there in that description, if we are having physical symptoms, and rather than listening to those as the warning sign that they are, which I'll talk a bit more about in a second, we start then overthinking those. I hate this. I hate feeling dizzy. I hate when I feel sick. My head's all fuzzy because I've got so much to do. How can I stop this? If we interfere with that, all we're going to do is produce even more adrenaline, which is what is giving us those physical symptoms in the first place. And this is why it becomes a cycle. I was in this state of fight or flight for months on end sometimes. And that's not because adrenaline in your body lasts for months. It's because I kept overproducing it and reproducing it through worry and the vicious cycle, because I didn't understand what was happening. So, I hear it all the time with people in work. I've done a lot with organizations over this lockdown, and and again, running my own business, I understand like the business side of things and the aspects and the pressure of us kind of feeling like we need to financially achieve certain things and provide for our family. But I hear so often when people will say, but I just have to get all of this done. So even if I'm overwhelmed, I can't just stop and slow down because this has to be done. Well, if you continue to go against what your body is telling you, then you will inevitably get to the stage where I did, where my body doesn't care if I'm telling it I have to do it because of X, Y, and Z. It's just going to eventually stop you. And that might be through you getting a cough or a cold or a severe migraine. Or for me, it was constant panic attacks where I then didn't want to leave the room. And that was a pretty extreme way of me having to get to in order to listen to what was in here. And the better we get at listening to what's in here, the earlier we catch it and the less it spirals and escalates. And so the less time it takes to recover and for us to reset. If you think about an aeroplane coming into land to the runway, the airplane has a really sophisticated system of letting the pilot know whether it's going off course or not. So even when it's miles away from getting to that runway, even if it's slightly to the left or to the right, an alarm sets off. We work in the same way. So rather than a beep, 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 your alarm might be a bit of dizziness. It might be palpitations. It could be anything. It might be that you're going to the toilet more often. But it's your alarm to say you're off course. It doesn't have to be scary. It's just a warning. And the more we get to see that actually it's all being done in our favor, it's not there to kill us or to make our lives misery. It's there to get us to listen. And as I say, if we don't listen, if you're having headaches and you're not taking breaks and you're not slowing down and you're not hydrating enough and you're not taking notice of that, it's going to probably escalate to migraines to the point where you can't leave the house because your body is going to stop you. So if we embrace that and see, actually, we're really lucky that our body gives us these warning signs to say enough is enough. And I get it. We've all been there where we're like, but this has to happen. I remember when I had my daughter and I was then getting these warning signs constantly all of the time and I wasn't listening because I had to carry on because I had a child to look after. Well, eventually I was incapable because I didn't listen. And that is always going to happen eventually if we don't listen. So it's much better to listen earlier on when we've not even got to that runway and we hear the beep, beep, beep. Let's listen and pay attention to it because you will benefit massively. And the thing is, you get back on course quicker because you listen earlier and you reset, you're likely to feel like you've got this whole boost of energy. So the difference for me now, because I listen sooner and I take notice, I might have days where I can't be bothered. My motivation is low. I'm flat. It's normal. It's human. So rather than push through, I take some time back. I allow myself time to reset. And what happens is when I've reset, I have this boost and I get shitloads done. And I work really effective. So I work a lot less now than I've ever worked. But ironically, I get more done than I've ever got done. And that's not a coincidence. It's because I listen. I'm more in tune. And I don't fight what my body is telling me because I know there's no point, because it doesn't go anywhere. So it's really important that we see that our body's way and our natural physical response to what we're telling our body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And I know that people will kind of find themselves internally going, but I don't like it and it's awful. And if I wasn't feeling dizzy or if I wasn't as tired, I'd get so much more done. It's not the tiredness that's stopping you getting stuff done. It's not the dizziness. It's the fact that you're not listening and you're not noticing and you're not understanding that your thoughts are creating your feelings and therefore your physiological response day to day. And again, I just wanted the bit that I want to reiterate that I hear all the time, even, you know, people that run companies right at the top to the very wealthy, you know, wealthily successful people here to, you know, down here where we might feel we are and just sort of plodding along makes no difference. You don't become immune the more successful you get. In fact, if anything, it probably becomes harder to navigate. And if you find yourself telling yourself, I can't take time and rest and stop because X, Y, and Z, then you need to call yourself out for bullshit. Because what will happen is your body will stop you anyway. Whether you've got children, whether you've got bills to pay, whether you've got deadlines to meet. If you don't listen to your body, eventually it will catch up on you. It always does. Because it's dead clever and it's keeping you alive. And one of the ways of keeping you alive is to stop you when you're doing too much, when you're not listening. We have this wonderful machine that we wander around in every day that's phenomenal. And we don't always use it the way that we should. We misuse it. We interfere with it. We don't trust it. So that thing of holding our breath, like I said earlier, if you held your breath to the point where you thought you could stop yourself from breathing and kill yourself, it's not going to happen because your internal system is going to take over and it's going to get you breathing again. And that's wonderful. And we have that with us day in, day out. It's guiding us. That innate well-being is there all the time. And I know I've mentioned this in previous videos, even when I was at my most overwhelmed, when I look back now, I see that internal sat-nav was guiding me, but I was just so in a panic and I didn't understand how it all works that I wouldn't listen. I'd go, yeah, I might be all right, but I'm too focused over here on what's going wrong. So I'm going to leave that there and I'm going to come back tomorrow and we're going to have our final one. And in tomorrow's, I'm just going to be doing a little bit of a recap. I'm going to be talking a little bit about self-sabotage and I'm going to be using a metaphor about us getting to the top of the mountain. So I don't normally pick up on comments on here, but I've just seen one pop up. I'm just going to talk to it for now. Someone's saying they're so anxious, they have so much to do and they don't know where to start. It's horrible. Okay. So the place to start is by listening to that. So much to do, so much to do. Actually, the only thing you need to do right now is listen to what your body's telling you, which is that you are overwhelmed. It will reset, but it'll only reset when you stop overproducing adrenaline. And you're going to overproduce even more by constantly going over all the things you've got to do. So let yourself off the hook for the next hour or so that you're not going to think about, or you're not going to go over what you need to do. You're going to see how you feel in an hour. And if you really leave that well alone, you're probably going to feel much more like doing it in an hour. And just start with one thing. If I think I've got to tidy the house and I look at it and it's a shit tip and I go, oh my God, the bathroom needs cleaning, the kitchen, the recycling needs sorting, the beds need changing. Then I end up lying on the bed going on the iPad and scrolling for an hour through TikTok or whatever because I can't face it. So what I do when I recognize that is I go, I'm just going to go and put a wash on. That's it for now. We overwhelm ourselves through our thinking, telling ourselves we have so much to do. And as I said earlier, we won't get any of it done if we don't listen, because our body will stop us. So one thing, but the first thing before you even do one single thing is to give yourself, go and have, very British, go and get a cup of tea, sit on your backside and do something that doesn't involve very much. And allow yourself time to settle and reset. Okay, thanks everyone. And I will look forward to our last day tomorrow. Take care.